The Silver Screen Project.
Welcome to the Silver Screen Project, where we look back at a series of films in anticipation of an exciting new cinema release.
In preparation for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, we went back and watched all 4 of the previous Indiana Jones films and have now both seen the Dial of Destiny.
Ooh.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, I thought it was a fun adventure. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I think coming away from Crystal Skull quite positively, I was quite open-minded to this.
Yeah.
It gets very silly at times, but I was kind of like, it's gradual enough, and we're doing non-spoilers at first, just for anyone listening. Anyone listening, of course. But yeah, I was with it for the ride, and even when it gets kind of wilder than the series ever has before, I was there with it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, there was things I didn't love about it, but overall I had a positive experience.
Yeah, similar for me. I thought it was great fun, and I've got my criticisms that we'll talk about later. But like overall, it was kind of what I expected and what I'd hoped for an Indiana Jones film in 2023.
Exactly.
And like it does get a bit silly, but I'm kind of thankful that I recently watched the other 4 because it made me realise they're actually all a little bit silly, aren't they?
It's almost just like each one's turned up the dial a little bit more, as it were, you know.
Yeah, and it's like, there's some stuff. If there was no like films before this and you saw this, you'd be like, well, that's a bit silly. That's kind of over the top.
It kind of comes out of nowhere. But it's forecasted quite well as well at the same time. So.
And in this universe, it's kind of like anything goes. Like we know that like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail,
some form of God exists in some way.
Are real. We know aliens visited Earth. We know there's magic stones in India. Like
exactly, yeah. So anything should be on the table, and yeah, it is. We get quite a lot of action scenes in this, as you'd expect. Not all of them fully with Indiana Jones himself, because he is a little bit older. I thought he stood up pretty well.
Yeah,
they propped him up pretty nicely.
I thought he was great. Like as we've kind of been saying in recent weeks, that Harrison Ford fucking loves playing Indiana Jones. You can really see it again in this, and I think there's 1 or 2 scenes where he bloody acts his arse off.
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
there's some great moments.
It's like he really loves this character, and he put everything into this, and you can really see. And like, even though he's older, he still does some action bits.
You can still see some bits. I'm sure there's some bits with stunt doubles or replacements or whatever. But generally speaking, you can see it's him moving around. I think maybe because we've seen him in Star Wars, him being this kind of age, you know, in the recent Star Wars the sequel trilogy, it's not a complete surprise like what he can do and the limits he's got. But he's still, like you say, he loves it, so you can see he's kind of going for it.
Yeah,
and they relegate some of the action to Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character, Helena, she called, overall I thought she was pretty good, you know. Like I didn't love her, but I liked that they didn't try to have her as a replacement to him. She's clearly a different character, even more so I think than Mutt Williams in the previous one, where he was almost destined to follow, whereas her kind of her goals and allegiance, at least at the start, are in a different place to him. Yeah. So I can appreciate what they did there. We get some returning characters, which maybe we won't talk about in non-spoilers.
Some appreciated cameos,
some little cameos and stuff.
And there's plenty of callbacks to the earlier films. Like, I don't think it would be a spoiler to say we get the map travel thing again, which is a staple in all these films.
I think we talked about the kind of formula the last 2 episodes of this, and I think overall it follows a similar formula.
Yeah.
And, nothing super unexpected happens plot-wise. It's kind of the settings and the way things develop are surprising in ways, but it starts off with a mini adventure, which was a bit of a surprise for me in a way.
I really appreciated that it started with that, because we talked about how Crystal Skull didn't really do an iconic start, whereas I feel like this was like, oh yeah, this is a proper start to an Indiana Jones film.
And it's similar to Last Crusade in that it's kind of, it's not really that. I was thinking Last Crusade, it kind of links into the modern day in that. Kind of does in this because it's related. Maybe not
loosely
quite the
related,
same way.
yeah.
But I don't really have masses I can say without getting into spoilers. I don't know if you can think of too much else.
No, it's very indie, and I think if you're a big fan of the franchise and you go into this like not wanting to pick it apart, you'll probably enjoy it.
Yeah.
So
no, I'd agree. Yeah, cool.
So let's go into it. Spoiler time. So the main plot is Archimedes' dial, the dial of destiny, which I really liked as a like MacGuffin in place of like the Ark of the Covenant and the Holy Grail and stuff. I think it's fun. I like that it was something different and it wasn't like a religious piece.
Well, at the start, there's the lance or the spear of Longinus, Longius, which is kind of a misdirect there, and because that is one of the things that I think Hitler was after in real life.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a fun little. Here's what it is. Oh no, actually, because I knew that it was called the Dial of Destiny. I think I'd seen like a shot in the trailer of this golden kind of almost like the golden compass kind of dial thing, which that in itself you could argue a bit silly, but they do kind of explain it, don't they, with the kind of the loop there. But I like that that opening scene is just, it fills in some of the gaps, which is literally what I was speaking out last time. I was like, it's a shame we didn't get to see his war adventures.
I thought that opening scene was great because it's like, I think bringing back the Nazis is a fun idea, because the Nazis are an easy villain because they're just like the personification of evil.
Exactly.
When Nazis are there, you know what you're dealing with. Don't you explain like justifications,
any moral stuff, really?
They're Nazis. So it's great just being like, oh, they're in World War II. Toby Jones was fun.
He was really good.
He reminded me a bit of Marcus Brody in like The Last Crusade as that kind of character. But I think also the de-aging of Harrison Ford looked really good.
Yeah, I thought for the most part. I think the very first lingering shot threw me off a tiny bit. And I was kind of looking at it and thinking like, if this was in a video game, this would be fantastic. But it was then going back to, was it Baron von Strucker was the other guy? I'm pretty sure it was I was like, that guy's fucking typecast there. I guess Mads is a little bit as well in a way, kind of this kind of character. But generally speaking, once he was moving around, there was there's always a couple of shots every now and then where it kind of slips,
I think the only thing that really threw me off was the voice a bit, because he sounded like an old man.
Definitely, I feel like they could have done a little.
But other than that, and it was a fun little action scene, like on a train is always a
all
fun
of that
setting.
Was good. Yeah. There was some parts with the CG on the train, which in an ideal world would have been like done properly now, but now they just don't do that really, do they? So
I think generally the action set pieces are fun. We get a couple of classic Indy chases. We get the one through the parade when he's on the horse.
Love that.
And I was
great.
Like, that's great. The cars swerving between the
all
thing.
the New York 1969 all looked really cool. I like when he goes past the astronauts and the
filmed in Glasgow, weirdly enough.
Oh, was it? How weird.
But then also the like tuk chase as well.
Yeah, I thought that was okay.
In Tangier, I was like, I think it went on a bit too long. But
I felt
like,
similar to when we talked about the jungle chase from the last film.
Yeah,
it got a little bit like that for me at times, but not as kind of egregiously like Pirates of the Caribbean-y. It's just there's only so much that people can jump between carts and kind of fall in between, and after a while, and that guy who's like, oh, I love you, Helena, and he keeps going, I was like, oh, fucking hell,
that guy's a bit
annoying. Was just like they did that a little bit too much for me.
I think another action thing that I loved was when they go back in time to ancient Greece, turn up, and there's just this big sea battle on, and there's Romans and everything going on. I was like, fuck yeah, this is cool.
Because when they were going through, I was like, what are they going to do with this? Like, because when Indy's like sure that, or at least he seems to be sure that because of the continental drift, they're going to be wrong. I like that Mads is like, until the last minute, he's like, And I was thinking like the wildest thing they could do would be like dinosaurs, but it's like,
I think I remember seeing a couple of years ago a leaked set photo of Harrison Ford surrounded by like some Roman soldiers.
Fair.
So I think then it was like, oh, maybe there's time travel. So it wasn't a huge surprise to me.
And as soon as like you start seeing the ships and like vaguely kind of what's going, and they've spoken about that situation there, the invasion of Syracuse or whatever. It was like pretty much the opening scene of the teaching. They all know about it. It's very convenient, but they kind of explain it with the Archimedes said it.
And like it looked great.
It looked really
like,
cool.
Watching it from above. And then obviously it explains why Archimedes had like propellers on his grave and a watch.
Yes, so the watch he took from Mads Mikkelsen's character.
Mads Mikkelsen,
And I guess by seeing, or maybe by studying the watch, he managed to work out clockwork earlier than before. And then by seeing the completed dial, it kind of gave him the finished ideas.
Which is a fun kind of paradoxical loop.
It doesn't really make sense that a Nazi plane like crashed there, and I guess they just harvested that and used the bits for other stuff. It's whatever.
It was.
But I thought that part where, first of all, I thought Indy had been shot in the heart, and I was like, he's taken a long time to die. It's a shoulder wound.
It's the Holy Grail.
It's still there. But I thought that whole scene where he is like, he's just given up.
Yeah.
And at first I'm like, oh, come on, mate. Like, stop being stupid. Like, I know you're not like a physicist, but you should know that you staying here isn't probably going to do the timeline that you did. But then when he's just like, I've just got nothing, mate. Like, I've got nothing.
Yeah.
And I expected her to be like, you've got me. And it's like, I'm kind of glad they didn't go that way because they didn't really have that relationship.
I do enjoy it because I kind of saw his side of like, he's dying and he's got a chance to sit here and chat with Archimedes.
Yeah.
I thought like, of all time zones for them to go back to, it's convenient that they go to a time where they speak Latin because they can fluently speak Latin. If they'd gone to like medieval England, they would have been fucked. But I was like, I could genuinely like see him just trying to stay and be part of history,
even just like for a day or whatever. However long it took him.
I'm glad he came back.
No, me too. And I really liked the scene, although it was very convenient. You know, she socks him out, and then like we don't have to see the whole rescue. It's whatever. Like it would have just been an extra bit. I really like that whole bit with Marion and the reuniting, and it was the which bit hurts. There was this bit.
I thought that was great.
It was really cute, and there was I was barely anyone in the cinema when I went to see it, and there was a woman that was sat like directly behind me, and I could hear her like crying during that bit, and then that made me a little bit like, this is quite sweet.
It is sweet. It's a great callback.
And it is that whole thing with his son Mutt Williams died in Vietnam. And I thought at one point when they were talking about time travel and the stuff, I was like, is he gonna try and go back and like stop him from enlisting? But I was like, but Shia LaBeouf's not exactly like.
I thought it was kind of a really good way to deal with it because like on one side, like the last film ended when he's got this son who they're gonna work with. On the other side, he wasn't a popular character. Maybe don't want Shia LaBeouf back. So like they could have just ignored it, which would have been a bit weird, but actually taking it and making it like a heartfelt moment for Indy. That scene where Harrison Ford acts his arse off, getting emotional about it. I was like, actually, that's the best possible use they could have had for that character.
Absolutely, And I was surprised even to see Marion turn up at the end as well. I was happy to see her even just for that scene, but I was resolved to the fact that she just wouldn't be in it, and I was like, if they're not together, I like
that we got Salah back.
We got him for a couple of times. I half expected him to go on the plane with him, or he follow him there and turn up when they were in Morocco.
I thought he was quite sweet where he was like, I want to go on an adventure again. And it's like
I don't know how he must be in his 80s, surely. He was quite sprightly. In every scene he was jumping around. He was running he was like, I'm not going to get any action scenes, but I'm going to run across this road.
What else was Antonio Banderas has a cameo.
I liked it, but I thought it was a little bit of a kind of short scene for him. I would have liked to see a bit more of that.
I think he said it was a cameo. I thought it was quite fun. I liked the fact that like Indy obviously will have friends around the world with different things. He doesn't have to rely on Marion and Salah and the same people every time. Course, I like that it's like actually he's also got this other,
especially like
friend.
An old guy who's like in his 50s. It's like that makes sense timeline wise, and I like that they were just these weird little like fisherman-y like diving people. At first I was kind of suspicious of them, but like they just turned out to be just weird nice. Like sunburnt people. And like so there's also the kid Teddy who's like Helena's version of Short Rounds. They even do the like, she tried to steal my thing or whatever. I was like, okay. But I like that like he learned to swim from what he told him. There's
that was
little
nice.
Bits like that.
Mads Mikkelsen's great. He always is. He suits playing an artsy.
He sure does.
And like he really like steps in. I like how they like were like, oh yeah, he's an American scientist.
Schmidt,
and like he took them to the moon. He's off to get his presidential medal, and it's like, and
he just decided to just move. Like
he's an artsy.
He was so close to just carrying on with his American life. He was like, actually, I've got this chance of doing. And the whole dates thing works out quite conveniently because was it only on that 6th of August or whatever they could do the time stream thing. So I think that was all the ones in the book.
No, I think my understanding was that, I mean, I don't know, I'd have to watch it again, that like on different days, portals turn up at different times.
Yeah, I think all the dates that he had written down in the book were all the same date though, just different years. Right, so that's what I was unsure. And they were like, oh, that date's approaching. But it might have just been one example of it. So I'm not sure.
Maybe.
Also, how did Archimedes do it if it was in the air? I guess they're not all in the sky. Because he travelled as well because... Oh, no, he never did because the watch came back. Okay, yeah.
He never did. Yeah. I like the twist that it wasn't a time machine. It was just Archimedes wanting to get back to this moment, essentially.
Yeah.
I was like, that makes sense for Archimedes, you know, the guy that I know really well. But like, it makes sense for that character. It's like, actually, he didn't build a time machine. He wanted to like save his people.
Right, yes.
In some way. And it was like, I like that twist that actually they're just going back there.
Yeah, because I was at one point kind of thinking ahead, like, how are they going to do this? And I was thinking, if they put together a clockwork thing that was built like thousands of years ago and it starts kind of glowing and doing stuff, it would just be a bit like... That would have been the step too far.
Yeah.
Because I know we had like a glowing crystal skull, but that was explained by it being like an extra dimensional being and stuff like that.
The Archimedes dial wasn't like a magic dial. It was just like really almost like mathematical. It just figured stuff out when there's going to be...
It was like a compass, effectively, wasn't it? Just to detect... It's still all very wishy-washy, you know, whatever. But hey, you know. I mean, he may have even used bits of that plane to make it. You know, that could have explained part of it.
There's some great lines in this as well that made me laugh. I think one that I remembered after was when Mads Mikkelsen shouts at Indy like, "Oh, you should have stayed in New York." And he turns and goes, "You shouldn't have gone to Poland." I was like, yeah, that's a good line. And there's another one being like, "Germans can't be funny."
Yeah. He says, "We're going to experience some turbulence." And he's like, "You shouldn't make jokes if you're German," or something like that. Like, wow, okay, yeah. I mean, I guess he wouldn't like Germans, would he? Like, it makes sense.
I liked as well, like the setting of like the late 60s, obviously the moon landing, but like they immediately kick you in there with like his noisy hippie neighbours playing the Beatles. Yeah, it's a magical mystery tour, and he's obviously an old man who doesn't like hippies, and you're like, that's just like great way to like here's where the time is. Here's catch you up.
Yeah, I liked the troop of kind of bad guys that like the henchmen. So we have the big guy with the very kind of German flat top,
huge guy,
and we've got Boyd Holbrook who plays the main guy, who's got his kind of classic mustache that he seems to have with a bad guy, but with like buck teeth inside to make him look a little bit more goofy.
I liked him because he was just like an awful person.
And what I loved, like in hindsight, was one of the first, I think the very first scene he's learning German, and it makes complete sense because they were going to travel back in time to Nazi Germany.
But I like that as well. It's like he wasn't a Nazi in the same way Mads Mikkelsen was. Like he's grown up in America,
but he's like a neo-Nazi.
neo-Nazi. So some negatives I have. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I don't think it's her, I thought she was good.
Right.
I thought her character was quite annoying for a lot of this.
Yeah, I would say
she was just like quite smug for a lot of it, and I just found it a little bit annoying.
I think because we're kind of on Indy's side with a lot of stuff, when she's being quite frustrating, so I thought the opening was fine, then when she kind of runs off with the doll, you're kind of like, what's going on there? And I think that was part of what I didn't love about the whole Morocco scene, because she's like doing this whole thing and you're not really sure if she's doing it for the money or if it's like a ruse. So you're kind of just like, am I supposed to like her or not? I feel like at that point we hadn't been given enough stuff, like emotional weight. I feel like
if she was like the main character in her own film, I imagine she could be quite likable about someone who like steals stuff and sells it at auction. But when you're in a universe of a guy who steals stuff from the Nazis to put in a museum.
He said the museum line like 3 times.
It's like, it makes her look a bit bad. I also thought Teddy was quite annoying. Like, they're clearly going for like the short round thing, but
I feel like they didn't give him enough to do, really. I can see the plane thing made sense. I don't really know why the pilot was asleep in the back, because he didn't really seem to need that guy.
Do anything at all.
I guess maybe to land, because he hadn't learned to. He never landed.
But then we don't see him do that.
No, so that was a bit, and like the whole bit where it felt a little. I really liked the kind of tomb raiding part where Helena and Indy are going through the different, not really like traps, but kind of little Ridley things and stuff.
It makes sense that it's more Ridley than traps, given he's an old man.
Yes,
I was
exactly,
like, I quite like that.
And even just like it's more of a kind of brain teaser vibe rather than like action adventure defending thing. And I guess because it's a tomb, I don't know. But but at the same time with that, we have the stuff with Teddy where he's kind of being taken along behind them by the Nazi guys.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, first of all, it's weird they didn't rescue him. Indy's just like, oh my God, I'm so worried about this boy. Let's go get the thing and he'll be fine.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like, I don't know how I feel about that decision. And then he's having like little mini adventures of trying to escape and then not escaping. And like the German guy, the big guy just like died underwater. That was a little bit, I was kind of expecting him to come up with like the grate attached to his hand or whatever.
It was just,
that was kind of it wasn't. Also the diving scene I didn't really love.
Yes, I didn't mind the diving as much. One thing in that scene though that just kind of took me out of it a bit is that like, oh, they got half the dive or they got part of the thing on the boat, but there's actually a cliff and there's the rest of the boat further down, and they go down there and get the other bit, and I was like,
oh no, it was the slate thing. Yeah.
And I was like, you mean that's just been it didn't look that deep, and like it's like 200 meters underwater and it's just been sitting there for 2,000 years and nobody's ever been able to find it.
I think they were saying that without the proper equipment you can't go that deep.
Yeah, but I think it's just when they went down, you saw the boat, I was expecting like a really deep Mariana's Trench kind of thing, and it was just kind of like you could still see the surface from like the bottom kind of thing.
I think a couple of things about that scene, like I was still a little bit suspicious of like Antonio Banderas and stuff, so I wasn't sure if I was supposed to be looking out for like some little nefarious stuff going on there. It was quite dark, which I guess is supposed to be realistic, but it kind of made it a bit like hard to see what was going on and who was who at times.
Yeah.
And then like doing the eels instead of the snakes is fine in principle, but it just became like a load of them going around.
It's hard to really tell what's going on in that.
I think Indy's tube got like caught at one point, but then I don't think he ever went back to. I don't really the action wasn't very like clearly choreographed kind of thing there. I think, and when the other guys turned up, that scene up there was fun where she's doing like the riddle and she's like playing along with him and the dynamite and the cigarette. That was a fun little moment. I think that was probably her best bit. Yeah, because she was being like a smart ass, but like playing it up so that he would like laugh up the.
It was like her. She was like most self-aware. Yes, at that point.
Yeah.
One other thing that I wasn't a huge fan of, that like it makes sense for the story, but him being like divorced from Marion so that he's a bit down in it and she's not in the film for most of it. Like I get why they did it. It just feel like it's a bit of a like shitting on the history. Why can't he just be like happily married? Why do they have to break up again? It seemed a bit cheap.
I feel like even if he'd been a bit more like, it's all my fault, like I went off and started drinking after Mutt died. Yeah. He was kind of just like, oh, she couldn't handle it, I couldn't handle it, we just broke up. Like it's a bit like defeatist.
Yeah.
I feel like if it was maybe, I'm not saying blame her because I feel like that's unfair if she's not in the film at all. But maybe because we see that he's like putting booze in his coffee at the start and stuff. Maybe say like he's kind of gone off the deep end a little bit.
Yeah, it just.
I know that's a cliche for the aging kind of hero, but at least it would have maybe explained.
Yeah, I don't think they needed to be separated at all. Like you could have had him at the start and him be like, look, I really need to go do this. My friend went crazy over this. I need to finish this for him.
The thing then would be people were like, well, why doesn't she go on it too? On the adventure as well.
Yeah,
I guess
maybe she's ill or something. I don't know. Yeah. But like, it just,
And also, I guess it's the whole thing of he needs a reason to want to stay back in ancient times.
Yeah.
So I in that sense it works.
There's a better way to do it.
I can see that as well.
I don't really have anything.
No, I think some of the actiony parts. There was a part right towards the start where you see him like hopping along the train from a distance and it looked really CG, and I was like, oh, it's so early in the film, I don't want to be picking stuff apart, but I noticed it and I was like, no, like there's bits that were clearly CG, like where they're like ducking under the tunnel, all that, which looked fine because they've got the smoke and all that. It was just certain bits where it's a full CG guy, and like it caught a couple of bits. I think under the water was one, and maybe one in the tuk bit, maybe when someone was leaping, and like. I'm not looking out for these bits, but when you notice them, it's like, it's a shame that there is those little moments there.
Yeah.
But it's with any of these films, like any Marvel film has like 4 of those moments.
Yeah, exactly.
And you mostly can just ignore it, but if I'm being picky, that's one of the things.
I think one last thing, I think this was just a great send-off for the character. He ends with his wife. He's got his friends there. He's got a relationship with his goddaughter.
Yeah.
And it seemed like more so than Crystal Skull. It feels like this seems like the end of the road for this character.
Although I think the moment of him taking his hat back off the line, I think is supposed to imply that he hasn't hung his hat up quite yet, kind of thing. But when I reckon
he just wears it in bed.
Yeah, I think that's the other thing there. Yeah. I think when I've looked it up, it has stated like 5th and final a few times. Yeah. So I imagine they put that out there in a statement. I mean, realistically, unless you do one in the next couple of years, like he would just be too old to play a main role in it. I think
Harrison Ford said this is his last one and nobody else is allowed to do it. So,
I mean, there might be a short round film at some point. If the timings had worked out better and, you know, Kihei Kwan had been in the public eye like 5 years ago, then maybe he would have been in this. I was kind of expecting, you know, half expecting some reference to him, but it just, I think schedule wise, it just didn't really.
Yeah.
And they don't do post-credit scenes, do they? So they couldn't have, hey, I'm here too. Imagine he turns up to like a family thing, do a Fast and Furious thing. Who else would be at the... everyone else is dead, aren't they? I think.
Yeah. I mean...
Maybe one of the other women that he dated.
I presume Henry Jones Sr. is dead. Marcus Brody.
We know Henry Jones Sr. is dead, yeah.
Jim Broadbent could have been there.
Yes.
So I've got a couple of bits of trivia. The first one we've kind of hinted at without saying specifically, which is every odd-numbered Indiana Jones film featured Nazis as the antagonist and Salah as Indy's sidekick.
Nice.
I was like, yeah, like we were saying, it makes sense to have them back because it's an easy villain, but having every other one doesn't overdo it.
Yeah.
I think it's a weird coincidence that when there's Nazis, Salah's there, like some like eccentric Egyptian guy.
I guess maybe partly because of Egypt being involved, so that might be.
Yeah, I think it's more he's in the first one, and then the second one's a prequel, and then he's in the third one.
Yeah. And then we spoke last week about he was going to make a cameo at the wedding, but didn't feel it would be worth the time.
The other one I've got is Mads Mikkelsen is the second actor to play both a James Bond villain and an Indiana Jones villain, having played Le Chiffre in Casino Royale and obviously in this. The first is Julian Glover, who we spoke about in The Last Crusade, who's Aristotle Christatos in For Your Eyes Only, 1981. Okay. So I was like, makes sense. He was also doing Star Wars at the time. So
who's he in Star Wars?
He's
one of the Empire people.
Yeah. He's is he the one that gets strangled by
he may well
Vader?
Be, yeah.
Or just some other Empire guy. But I was like, that's a fun little thing. Maybe in 30 years, Mads Mikkelsen will voice a giant spider.
I don't understand that.
Julian Glover voiced Aragog in Harry Potter.
Right. I was like, maybe.
Yeah.
Is he dead now?
Julian Glover. I can't remember because he was in Game of Thrones as well, wasn't he?
Is he
up
at the?
No.
Oh yes, sorry, I'm getting.
Yeah.
I've never made the connection there. No.
Yeah, he's fucking everything.
No. Oh yeah, there's that great bit where he like stops pretending to be like Doddery. That was great. Yeah.
But anyway, that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. So the only thing left to ask is, did Dial of Destiny live up to the hype for you?
Yeah, I think it did. Yeah, I really had a good time watching it. Like I said, it wasn't a perfect film. I don't know. Actually, do we want to do a rankings after this? Is it too fresh?
Do we ever do rankings?
I don't know, but we could do.
I don't think we ever have done.
But I don't think it would be in it wouldn't be in my top 2. It might be too fresh to do rankings, to be honest. I don't think it would be in my top 2, or maybe 3 or 4, somewhere up there. I think it was better than Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
But there's still stuff I liked about that. But having seen it once, I think it's too early. But yeah. My long way of saying prod yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm also prod yes because I had good fun with it. I mean, in terms of rankings, for me, I reckon it's a definite 4.
Yeah.
But I think it's
that originals plus. Yeah.
I think it's closer to Temple of Doom in 3rd than it is to Crystal Skull in 5th.
Yeah.
Like there's a bigger chasm there.
If it was on a graph, they'd be
But Prod Jess, I had great fun with it. It was everything I'd hoped it would be. Cool. And
I think a lot of it as well, like I was just like, I really like Harrison Ford. Like watching these again, like it's just like he's so good no matter. I feel like there's so many Harrison Ford films I haven't seen that I really want to go back and watch now.
I think this is him at his best, isn't it? And like
you've said, he's just
he
loves
a star.
it. Yeah.
But that is Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Hopefully you enjoyed it as well, and you enjoyed this. Let us know if you did.
Yeah, and if you want to find more stuff like this, we've got the Project where we talk about projects throughout pop culture and history, and you can find it on the same podcast channel as this.
Thank you and goodbye.
Bye.